I'm Dave Greenwood, and this is Overcoming Distractions. If you are an adult with ADHD, a busy professional, an entrepreneur, a high achiever, or just need some strategies to navigate your adult ADHD, you're in the right place. Who am I? I'm an entrepreneur with ADHD and the author of 2 books, Overcoming Distractions and Overcoming Burnout. I coach and mentor people just like you, and together we navigate the ups and downs of adult ADHD. From getting out of our own way to helping people just like you thrive in the workplace. That's what I do. Want more info on working with me? Hit overcomingdistractions.com. Ready? Let's get to today's podcast. All right, gang, it is Overcoming Distractions, and we're back. So we are going to dig right into this, because here's a fact that none of you can argue with, is that those of us adults with ADHD have some type of challenge with sleep. And I know you're saying, yep, okay, yep, I'm listening. So I've worked with a ton of people over the years, busy professionals with ADHD, as you know by now if you've listened. And I can tell you a large percentage of people that I work with one-on-one have some type of challenge with sleep. I can give you the basics, like don't watch Netflix till 2 a.m. Okay. But some of you know you have genuine challenges. But that is one of them. And I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with they're like, the wife and kids go to bed and they're like, all right, cool, I'm going to go punch up Netflix for a little bit. Not a great idea. Unless, of course, you work on the third shift and you need to unwind, but we'll get to that. So, but I know that sleep is something that comes up in the world of ADHD over and over again. So today we're going to try and move that needle in the right direction for you. We're going to go over some of the basics of sleep, I believe. And I have Nick Stewart. He's the author of Sleep Fitness, the top 10 sleep facts that matter. He's a sleep consultant.
Arrogant title, Dave.
Yeah, but that's cool. That's fine.
I mean, there is a backstory as to why I made it 10. So I should say I was working on like a Lord of the Rings size book. And then I lost a friend to sleep apnea.
Yeah, but you could have done like 7.5 facts, you know. I mean, so that would really get my interest, you know.
Yeah.
But Nick, you're a sleep consultant, you're a coach, you work with people who kind of have the challenges that I just described. So give me the brief overview of your work and how you work with people.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll skip my personal story for a second because I think it will come up, and it's good for people to hear. But I think the thing that sort of differentiates me from other coaches is that other than sleep apnea, which if you don't know and you're listening, that has to do with your breathing airway, and you'll go to the hospital and get tested. And if you're not breathing enough, they'll give you a machine and force the air. Or narcolepsy, which David might have during this interview because he's so bored, he just keeps nodding off. So minus those 2 people, my door is open. And one of the things in the book, the second chapter, I actually quote the Joker, but really what I emphasize, and I've found that a lot of people in multiple places that I've posted and stuff really respond to this, and I wasn't expecting it, is it's highly personalized. So when you think about like physical fitness, if Dave and I like worked out 3 times a week together for 3 weeks, we'd both measure stronger by the 4th week. It's not like crazy thing. With sleep folks, I in the last 4 months, I don't think I've had one person have the same issue. So my sleep tech friend says I'm like a nurse doing triage. It's like someone comes in and I'm like putting things in here and there and everywhere. So I'd say the one thing is that I teach a sleep fitness 101 class that it meets over 6 weeks, and it really starts with really identifying what this person as an individual, where are they at, and starting from there. A lot of people are used to being like, do you fit into this standard category A, and then I work with you and then move you into B, and that's just not how I work. So I really end up with just a wide variety of people. So a guy I'm working with right now, I've never worked with a guy like this before. His circadian rhythm, or the nerds will call it the C process, it's totally dislocated. So he can sleep for 8 hours, but like an hour from now, he might fall asleep for 8 hours. And then 15 to 17 hours later, he might go to bed again for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So we're working on things totally different than someone else, who has a more common issue, perhaps.
But I think that that's an important thing for people if they want to work with somebody, whether it's somebody like yourself to help them with sleep, or you know, somebody like me where they need help kind of figuring out ADHD in the workplace, or maybe they're burned out a little bit, or whoever that person is. Uh, I have people who kind of shoot me an email through the website, and I want to learn more about your program. I don't have a program. I meet you where you are. And I think
Yes,
that's kind of where I hear you
yes,
saying, you're right. Everybody's
yes.
different. It's the same thing here. We're like, all right, I just got promoted. I'm in a busy workplace. Now I'm supervising 4 people. I have 2 young kids. My husband travels and I have ADHD and I'm 45 years old. I mean, that's completely different from the solopreneur with ADHD. This is a completely different circumstances. So,
Yeah, and
you
you
know,
prioritize what things that you would introduce to them. So so I used to be a full-time coach for Fortune 500 companies, and when I sort of was like, long story, got back to this and was like, okay, I need to do some practice runs. I was sort of gifted 2 trial people, and one was a guy who had PTSD and really bad dreams, and the other one was a woman who I wasn't told her age had extreme anxiety. Well, I later found out that she was like 73. So with her, maybe meeting two would have been about just educating her about the fact that when you turn that age, you actually don't sleep as much.
mm,
Like it's just a biological fact. And so you got to get our head around that.
yeah.
The guy with PTSD, in around week 4 or 5, I'll introduce mindfulness meditation. I would never introduce that as like the first plan of attack with someone,
Yeah.
unless they happen to have have really horrible dreams, and I could teach them about sort of disassociating those feelings using mindfulness meditation.
Yeah.
So just those 2 people alone, you wouldn't start in the same place. You would reorganize kind of where you're going.
No, and I think that's good for again the audience of this podcast, where it's a lot of busy people, high achievers with ADHD. Is every circumstance is different, but let's kind of dig into that because I can tell you that for years that if I haven't gotten a good night's sleep, it really does just spill into the following day, and I'm like I'm people may people might actually say you don't have ADHD because I I go to bed at pretty much the same time every night. I mean, it's been years. We also had, you got to get kids to school, so you got to get them to bed as well. So that was a little bit of a motivator as well. But talk to us about why that quality sleep. And I say quality sleep because, like you say, you can sleep for 8 hours and still feel like junk in the morning. But why is that quality sleep such an important part of our lives?
Let me qualify quality sleep real quick in a way that might be friendly for ADHD people. And this could
Yeah.
be because I also, just for listeners to know, I am a late adult diagnosed ADHD person myself. So a lot of this stuff is personal. Um, but when someone says, "Did you sleep well?" in my class, in the program, I really boil it down to 3 things. Are you getting the number of hours of sleep that have been researched and tested, and we finally have an answer for that. Sweet spot's around 7.5. If you get a little less and you get a little more, it doesn't matter. If you're someone with ADHD and you are watching Netflix till 3 in the morning and then you're in bed for over 10 hours, this is my advice to you. Get out of bed however you have to get out of bed. Because one of the key things that has come up in two of the biggest studies, we don't know if it's causation or correlation, is that people who linger in bed for 10 or more hours have a real high propensity for depression.
Hmm.
So you really don't want to add that to the mix as well. Um, and so one is how many, what's the number of hours? And then you said quality of sleep. How do we measure quality of sleep? About, so someone from 20 to about 60 years of age, you want to be getting 1.5 to 2 hours of deep sleep. And we can break that down into two parts, but we'll just leave it as that for now. And then lastly, so a lot of people haven't heard of this, is efficiency. Is just what's the total amount of time you spent in bed and what was the total amount of time that you actually slept. And the idea being most people want to see their clients be around 85%. I'm a little crazy. I like 90, 95%. I like to know that you got in bed, maybe you did some transitionary reading or something, and then you were boop, lights out.
Yeah.
So when I work with someone, first of all, I teach them that. And then we spend time doing inventory. Where are you with each of those things? And now let's pick kind of a small, tiny a dial movement up in each of them to get you so that all three are lined up and you are getting healthy sleep. So I just wanted to hit that right away,
Yeah.
right off
I,
the bat.
I think, in writing Overcoming Burnout, there was one characteristic of people that were burned out, whether they have ADHD or not. But one of them was like, they could have slept 15 hours and still felt like they hadn't slept. And I attribute that to just the overall chronic stress going on. It's just like you just can't catch up. People are like, all right, I got the weekend off. I'm just gonna catch up my sleep. I'm gonna sleep in. But you know what? It 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 they just felt like they could never ever catch up. Do you see that a lot?
Recently I worked with, and there's a gender thing too. So if you're a listener and you're a guy with ADHD, man up and get and talk to people like David and I, because a lot of men are very intimidated to talk about their sleep issues, which was a shock to me. Um, but I had a friend of mine recently who also had the sleep apnea piece and finally got treated. He got 7 hours of sleep for 3 months in a row. The CPAP machine told him he was only missing a breath or two once in a while. Well, he was exhausted, just like you said.
Yeah.
After 3 months of what should have been the most energizing sleep of his life, he had no energy. He was not recharged. He was not restored, and he was not rested. And he went to his board certified primary care person, told him. The guy looked at him blankly and said, "Give it a year." To say that that's inappropriate is my nice way.
Mm, yeah.
So what I did with him is we started trying to figure out what's a good tracker that is dependable enough to look to see, are you getting the deep sleep that you need? So my immediate theory was, my guess is he's not getting one of two or both of the types of deep sleep. So, and I wouldn't have believed them, but about a month and a half before that, I too had gotten about 7 hours of sleep, woke up and felt like I never went to sleep, checked my tracker, and as it turned out, I basically was in a light phase of sleep for the 7 hours. And if you are, you're not going to feel recharged and ready to go the next day.
Yeah.
So that's why that deep sleep, the two types of deep sleep, are really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be make or break. You could have the best numbers for quantity, and you could have really great efficiency numbers, but if you don't have any deep sleep, you might as well have gone out to the bar and just drank and partied for a few weeks. There's
And
been no difference.
and went to bed for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so in your work, you probably as you mentioned, everybody's different. So what are the in your experience working with people, what are some common reasons why people struggle with sleep, and maybe some uncommon, because again, we all have those kind of different circumstances, different types of careers, family situations, stressors, what have you. So what are some of the common and uncommon things that people might relate to in terms of struggling with sleep?
Um, yeah, I took some notes before we got on, and I think one uncommon, I'm going to start with an uncommon one because this is one that I just learned about. And this is again where I put a huge amount of faith and trust into a new client. And if they feel like they think they have an idea of what's going on, we usually go with that to start. And I am now working with a guy, as I mentioned, whose circadian rhythm, so like all the timing of all of his bodily systems are broken.
Mhm.
But one of the things that he mentioned when I had it was great. I had an in-house meeting with him. I always wanted to do this because when I had my insomniatic catastrophe, no one ever sat me down and just said, "So what's going on? What happened? Tell me in your own words. Start where you want to start, end where you want to end, say it the way you want to say it." And it came out that I think on his father's side, there had been sleep issues in the family. I had never heard of this. And then within a week, I got two, just by luck, two journal articles came across my desk. And I would say that's the most uncommon thing I've ever heard, is that there is some evidence to suggest that you can have some genetic disposition. So for you listeners who ever had kidney stones, like I've got my father's side and my mother's side has people with kidney stones. So every 7 years, I get to go to the hospital and scream.
Yeah.
So I would say, number one most uncommon thing I've ever heard is that this person's circadian rhythm and what's going on with him in some more details that are private could actually partly be due to hereditary genetics.
Yeah.
And that's, when I think about late stage diagnosis of ADHD, I think part of the journey, and I think people will understand this, is that part of getting better is just accepting what the facts are.
Yeah.
So I had to accept, like, oh, this guy might actually be dealing with something that is genetically inherited. Like, we have to account for that. So I'd say that's the most uncommon. Um, let's see. I think the most common one is actually has to do with our other interest. Um, well, there's another confusion one, but there's a common interest one, which is the fact, I don't know if you saw this the other day, they just surveyed it and it's like 50% of Americans, they're burned out.
Yeah. I'm not a big data guy. I don't think percentages actually solve the problem, but it brings light to the issue. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, and some people might say it's even more of that. I've seen like 85% of human resources people are burned out. So I just, but burnout is a huge factor in sleep,
Well, I
and it,
bring it out because some of the people that I've worked with who've factored that into what they think is going on for them, they do have a common thing. And I would say about 75% of the people that I work with, if this isn't the first thing we work on, we eventually do work on it by the end of the 6 weeks. And that is, we get up in the morning, we go to the job, and we're going. We get home and we're going, and then we think that we then get in the bed and then we'll just turn off. So I found, I was working with a woman who was a gym owner. She's a fitness owner, mother of two kids. And so as I started to ask her qualifying questions about what she did at night, it became really clear that she was action, 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 right up to around 11, and then get in bed and was confused as to why she wasn't falling asleep.
yeah,
So 75% of my job is kind of easy in the sense that that comes up a lot. And so we spend some time coming up with mini sort of sequences. So I basically told her, like, you need an hour of mommy time. What time do you put the kids in bed? 10. Great. What are you doing between 10 and 11? And then we just micro go into that and find out. So I would say coming up with a nighttime routine and when I thought about this before we got on, I was like, you know what? these same people and myself, a lot of us, we're actually doing it in the morning. Like a lot of us don't just get up and then run and go. We kind of get up, put clothes on, maybe have coffee, take a shower. And so we're actually doing a little routine as we slowly wake up and gear up and go. What most people are not doing is doing the same thing on the back end.
No, and that is something that we've done for years here, is that I just want to chill out for an at least an hour, if not two. And again, I'm rotting my brain watching the Food Network or something, or
I think you're
whatever
okay. I think
yeah,
you're okay.
yeah, whatever the hell it is,
Yeah.
but that's what I need to do. I can't like go out to say a networking meeting, or my father's getting up there in age, so I go over his house sometimes and come home, and I can't just jump into bed. I can't do it. I need to wind down and de-stress. So and you're right. That is I just have to have it. It's almost like ingrained in my DNA at this point. Even if I actually got home late,
You'll
I will
still do it.
I'll go to bed a little late because I just need to sit there and rot my brain for a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a necessary phase.
Yeah.
And most of us, because of our culture, need to plan it. And like I said earlier, I don't think out of maybe 12 people that I'm thinking of that had that, I don't know if anyone's routine was the same. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh
they're
yeah.
all different. Connected to that in a similar way that I have seen a couple times in the literature. This is really bothers me. I have fights with the lab technicians and sleep tech guys about this. Is in the literature they refer to this as arousal. And I'm like, the only arousal I'm aware of is sexual arousal. So why
Yeah.
do they keep mentioning sexual arousal? And then I find out, no, this just means being stimulated. And as someone with ADHD, I get very stimulated.
Yeah.
And so there's, sort of being anxious and hyperactive, which is a way of being aroused, and you can't go to sleep. But the best example I had of the opposite side was my father in his late 70s had never been to a rock concert. And I saw tickets for the Dave Matthews Band concert, and I ADHD immediately pressed buy, and wasn't, I guess, as clear until we got to the venue that we were in the sixth row.
Hmm.
And long story short, the next day I call him and I was like, that's like the best thing we've ever done in our life. That was great. His wife was like, don't ever go again. Like the whole night was so magical. He has major problems standing. He stood for like 90. I was sitting. He was standing for like 90% of it.
That's
But the
great.
first thing he tells me is, Nick, we got home and it was like 11 and I always fall asleep at 11. I couldn't fall asleep till after 12.
Hmm.
So clinicians would call that arousal. I
Hmm.
would just call that excitement, right? So
Well,
what's going
yeah.
on is his blood pressure's up a bit, right? He's excited, and then he's got adrenaline.
Yeah.
And so the adrenaline is never going to let you fall asleep.
Let's go back to the kind of
Yeah,
the routine for a second,
sure.
because I know, and one thing I really try and work with people on, um, you know, scenario, they get to their desk, they got 20 things on the to-do list. They don't even know what to start on, and then they start their day um in like a, lack of priority mode, or even panic mode sometimes. They're starting the day off wrong.
Are
But
you describing me?
I've been watching you. So, but there's, it's something as simple, and I'm going somewhere with this because I think everybody will relate to it, is, I really try, and I've done it for years myself, is like before, like you leave your desk or your workspace, I just kind of, it's just write down what you're going to do the next day. I don't care if it's two things, three things, four things, those kind of top priorities. Okay, so that's phase one of just, um, you know, lowering the stress level a little bit, so then you can kind of go home or walk out of your home office or what have you.
Hey, don't underrate that. That can cut your anxiety enough to like get you a little clearer.
Right. I think the second thing is having that nightly routine. And like we just talked about, whether it's all right, I'm just going to chill out for an hour. whatever, if it's TV, maybe some people can't see the blue light, or whatever it is, read a book. But I also like, we would like, I'd have breakfast ready. The coffee machine will be on a timer, so it would go off. Like, so literally, I walk out of bed, the coffee's like done and hot and ready, all that stuff. Laptop is charged, those types of things. And the point I'm getting at is that we often wake up at like 2 a.m. and go, oh shit, I I I forgot to charge my laptop, or I didn't make the kids sandwiches, or I have no idea what I'm going to do when I get to my desk in the morning. And those simple things, building in those kind of simple routines, in my opinion, help me sleep better, and they've helped other people sleep better. I'm far from a sleep professional like yourself, but I would think that the more you can lower your stressors, at the end of the day, and almost put things on autopilot, the better, right?
Yeah, yeah. The thing I wrote down immediately is Robert Allen. You know Robert Allen?
No, I may once you
I
describe
think
it, but
I think it's Robert Allen. Sometimes I get the Allens mixed up. His book I did not grab off my shelf to read for a long time because the cover was really cheesy until I hired you just described me, and I was in a tornado of confusion and knew I needed to hire a time management and productivity specialist for a few months. And long story short, I ended up falling onto a book that I had. I'm like, oh, do you mean this guy? And so for ADHD folks, Robert Allen's book, when Getting Things Done,
yeah,
could be called How to Reduce Your ADHD Anxiety by 75%. He's got these great lines where basically, just like you said, Dave, you're capturing everything.
yeah,
You're getting everything on paper. You have a thought and it comes back up in a minute or two. You're getting it down on a piece of paper that you already know you're going to follow up on. And boy, I started doing it just like I grabbed the book because I was like, oh, this guy actually got a certification with this guy. I should read the book. It might help. And then I, in a few weeks, then I ordered and this is a great one for ADHD folks, is a pocket pocket notebook. And they have nice slick ones on Amazon, and they fit right in. And you have an idea, or you're worried that you're going to forget that on June 9th, your mom needs the car to go for the hospital thing. And boom, you pull it right out of your pocket, you write it down, and boom, you're not thinking about it anymore. Well, after about 3 or 4 weeks, I wasn't carrying around my pocket notebook. And after a week and a half or two, I was like, why aren't I carrying it around? I love that thing. And then it became clear that like I had done so much capturing of all of those sort of constant invading thoughts that for the first time in like 25, 30 years, my mind wasn't inundated with tons of thought. Like there was actually some space of comfort in my mind. So, man, I went from being like, oh, this looks like a really cheesy book with a guy with a weird suit on to like, this is one of the best ADHD books I've ever read.
yeah.
Uh,
And it doesn't even have to do anything with ADHD. I mean,
no,
that's
no, and
yeah.
the other one that I was going to mention when you started was a book that I was reading in preparation for today called Hyperfocus. You
Hmm.
see this one?
No.
After a while, he does a great job of helping you control your technological devices in a way I haven't seen a book do. Um, so that's one big thing. But the other thing I think about this book so far, I'm not totally done with it, but I will be. Oh, sorry, his name is not Robert Allen. It's David Allen. He's the guy on the cover quoting this. It's Getting Things Done by David Allen. So check that out.
Okay,
This
cool.
but this book, after a while, had a lot of great practical things. And after a while, I realized these are helpful things for people, sure, but these things are required if you have ADHD.
Yeah.
There are
And
different
you want to get a
tactics.
good night's sleep. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, there were different tactics for different things. And I just, after a while, realized like, oh, for a regular person, this is kind of optional. And the book was written for just your average person. But if you have ADHD and you read it, you're like, that should be mandatory for me.
Yeah.
That's a must.
So let's do this, because I think we need to do part two, because I really want to kind of get into the guts of kind of
Yeah.
structuring a good sleep program. But as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
can you give people, like, what's the first thing that, I'm listening to this, I'm resonating with everything you say, I'm struggling with sleep, I know it. What's the first thing that you would recommend to somebody just to start to tackle or be aware of so they can kind of start to get on the right path of maybe repairing their sleep habit or what have you?
Yeah, I think I'll do two obvious ones and then a rare one. The obvious one for kids. So if you're a parent and you have kids and you're concerned, you really need to end the go play in your room line. It's
Mm,
over. It needs to be annexed from your house. The toys need to come out. Any of that type of stuff needs to come out, and your line needs to be that there really is no more go play in your room. Go play in the living room.
mm,
And just that alone can recondition a kid over a few months and really help a lot. So that's one of the first ones. This one, maybe your audience is smarter than the average bear, but if you have medication for ADHD, start dialing it. If you're taking a second dose, start dialing it 15 minutes earlier. Spend a week or two 15 minutes earlier before your last dose, because a lot of those medications, they're just tough on sleep. It's a real bummer, because the medication is so helpful for the ADHD, but it's really brutal for falling asleep. Like we talked about your heart rate. I have this device that measures your heart rate and does a bunch of other stuff we can get into that's great. But there have been nights where I'm like, oh my, I'm like 40 beats per minute away from what the average person needs to sleep. And it's probably the medication. So I would say talk to your doctor about starting to like angle your medication earlier in the day if you can, because that's definitely one of the biggest, most obvious ones that you could tackle.
yeah, and I think that's important to point out, as you and I are furthest thing from doctors or medical professionals. So make sure you talk to your doctor, because that's just like a key thing to
Your doctor
um
will be happy with that one. If you say, hey, I want to, take my second dose 15 minutes earlier for the next 3 weeks, they'll be thrilled. You know,
hmm,
they'll be happy about it.
yeah,
Um, and then I think, oh, I don't want to get into circadian training, but we could do that next time and kind of do some of the nuts and bolts. But of the literature I reviewed, it seems like a lot of ADHD people do struggle with circadian training, their circadian rhythms. And I have a very explicit three-part sort of technique to what I would call embed your morning circadian rhythm. And then there's a totally different thing you would do for nighttime, so that like Dave goes to sleep, you said, right at the same time at night, right? So your nighttime circadian rhythm is like embedded. But a lot of ADHD people's morning one is really messed up.
yeah.
So that's one of those things where if someone said I have ADHD, I'd probably be like asking them all about their mornings to see like, do you have it like locked down, or is there like a 3 hour variability in when you wake up? Because that's gonna hurt you.
3 hours of snooze buttons. Not
Yeah.
that I would know anything about that. Cool. All right, so that's good. So next time I want to get into kind of the meat of the issue here, the tried and true habits, more routines, more actionable items that people can um, undertake to start to get their sleep uh, going in the right direction for them, and start to mitigate those challenges. So,
Yeah, and Dave, I want to throw a secondary point and a special offer for your listeners, especially because I'm like I this ADHD thing is very real for me. I have a slew of my new book, which I actually I haven't seen this done before, but for ADHD, I don't know if you've noticed that articles online now often will be like, this article takes 4 minutes and 30 seconds to read.
yeah. Mm,
I did it for every subsection in the book.
mm,
So that if you have ADHD and you look and you're like, oh, this subsection is only a minute and 30 seconds, I can do that.
yeah.
Good to go. So what I wanted to offer is that if anyone picks up the book on Amazon, I'll send Dave the link. Shoot me a DM with a picture of you with the book, and you got yourself a 60 to 90-minute free consulting session with me, where, to kind of go back to your original question, is finding out where are you, locating
Yeah.
you along a spectrum, and then start building out what are the things that we could start to do to create a mini plan to move you from phase one to phase two.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right. We will have that link in the show notes, as us podcasters say. So, and Nick will be back very soon. So stay tuned for the real actionable items. But I think we got a good kind of overview of Sleep 101, the challenges we have, a couple quick tips, and a little bit of an offer. So we'll have you back for round 2 ASAP.